Good morning. Uh, let's move on to day 5 of Genesis 1, verse 20, which says, Then God said, Let the waters abound with an abundance of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth, across the face of the firmament of the heavens. So God created great sea creatures and every living thing that moves, with which the waters abounded, according to their kind, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, Be fruitful and multiply, fill the waters in the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth. So the evening and the morning were the 5th day. All right, so we're on to day 5. We've got a planet in a bubble, mostly land, a little bit of sea, and now we have a few animals made. Now specifically it's the animals of the sea and of the air, so it's birds and fish and other things like that. It's not land animals yet, okay, which is significant because they're all made on day 6, including man. Okay, and what's interesting, however, is the wording of this. When it says about animals in 120, it actually uses the Hebrew word nephesh, which is usually translated as soul. Now, this is a bit of a diversion from my usual line of teaching, but I think this is very interesting because I want to demonstrate something. I just want to demonstrate a really simple point. Not that this is an important doctrine, but the principle that underlies it is important. It's this: simply that we think we know what words mean, and we don't look into the Bible properly. And we often look into a dictionary, might go that far, but it might not be a very accurate dictionary, and we don't look into the Bible for ourselves to see what a word means. We assume that we're English and we're reading an English Bible, so we think we know what the word soul means. And actually I want to demonstrate to us that 99% of us have got a wrong idea of what the soul may be. Okay, now the Hebrew word is nephesh, and so our interest is actually in the Hebrew word and the way that Hebrew word is used by the biblical writers, the way that they define it, the way that they use it, and the way that they understand it. And this is important because sometimes we bring in ideas from our own religious background, our own philosophical background, our own culture, and sometimes those ideas are wrong, and we need to actually pare things back to what is in the Bible. One of the things that a lot of people say, if I go up to somebody on the street, or even somebody who's a Bible-believing Christian, and say, what does the word soul mean? They'll often say, oh, it's something that humans have. But actually, I would just point out that this is day 5. This is before man is created. So clearly, nephesh, soul, is something that applies to animals. Now, what that means, we don't know, but we know that it's animals as well as people. All right, so this is really important. That's a fundamental point to make, and I make it because so many people, oh yeah, I know what soul means. Yeah, soul is something that animals don't have. People have them, but animals don't. Well, Genesis 1:20 kind of implies otherwise. Okay, and I throw that out really to stop us in our tracks. And I just want to show you something. Now, this is a screenshot of my phone, and I want to demonstrate a point which I think will help you. I want to talk about a concordance search concerning Greek and Hebrew words. You might say, I can't read Greek and Hebrew. You don't need to, because I'm going to explain what happens with this. Now, this is a screenshot of my phone, and I use a Bible app which has Strong's numbers. And so if we go to Genesis and chapter 1, and we scroll down to verse 20, and we'll look at the wording here. Now, the beauty of this is that you don't need to read Greek or Hebrew. You can just read numbers. And you'll notice here that it talks about all the animals that have life. And when you click on that number, then you end up with this, which is nephesh, and it's a definition. And I'm interested in this thing, find all occurrences. All right, and here you have a list of scriptures where this is used. You'll notice Genesis 2:7 that man is a living soul. Okay, and so you scroll down and you can see that there's more and more information there, all the verses where that word is used, so you can formulate your own definition. You're not going by the dictionary definition, which we just skipped over. You go instead by what you actually see in the scriptures, in all the verses where it's used. Now that's very important, because from there, as you look through that list, and there are dozens, I don't want to go through them one by one, but I'll just pick out some of the most relevant ones. First of all, we pointed out Genesis 1:20, that it's animals who are nephesh. All right. It's interesting that in 2:7 it's applied to man as well, and I'd point out there, just as a note, that it's a living nephesh, and that Adam actually becomes a living nephesh. Okay, it says that God forms a body from the dust, and then he snorts into his nostrils the breath of life. The word is nishmat there for breath. It's not ruach as normal, nishmat, but I don't think there's any difference between the two. So he's got a body, and he snorts breath or spirit into him, and he becomes a living soul. And I point that out, he becomes a soul. He doesn't get a soul. And this is the first point. The soul is not something that you have. It's something that you are. Okay, now that's subtly different. It's like the English word person. If I came up to you and said, do you have a person? You'd say, what are you talking about? Don't you speak English properly? I am a person. I don't have a person. I am a person. And I would say that the same applies to the word nephesh. You know, I am a soul. I don't have a soul. Okay, nephesh is a whole person. Adam's body, with breath or spirit snorted into it, becomes a living soul. And I'd point out the difference. He's a living soul as opposed to a dead one. Okay, now the whole point is that what we're seeing in the Bible already is that there's a different Hebrew, Jewish, biblical usage of the word nephesh or soul, which does not match with our Western, Greek, European thinking or definition, okay, which is influenced by Greek philosophy and of course the Greek language, quite naturally. You know, it's very interesting that, as you know, a lot of people will say, oh yeah, the soul is everything except the body, you know, and generally speaking in European thinking, spirit and soul are often equated as being one and the same, and that they're really not, because in Numbers 6, for example, it says that somebody should not touch a dead nephesh. Okay, and that's a corpse. Okay, so it's the bones and the body which are left, the mortal remains which are left after somebody dies. So the soul, as such, people take definitions from Greek philosophy and they say the soul is the deeper inner man, or the real man, or the seat of the emotions, and all this kind of stuff. None of that is biblical. That is unbiblical. In the Bible, the body is the nephesh. In fact, it's the whole person. Okay, so later on you'll see that there are souls under the altar. Now clearly they're not in a body. So soul is a very broad word, like the English word person. It can mean, as it were, to kind of phrase, you know, the ghost of a man, or it can be their corpse. You know, so it's not, you know, the deeper seated, emotional, real person. That's completely unbiblical. That's Greek philosophy. And we need to try and, as somebody once said, de-Greece the church, trying to take the Greek thinking out and think like a biblical scholar, okay? And think about the word nephesh. Think of it as not something you have, but something you are. It's the whole person. It's like the word creature or person. You know, an animal doesn't have a creature. An animal is a creature. You don't have a person. You are a person. So I say in the same breath, you don't have a soul. You are a soul. Okay, and so this is very important that we understand the difference, okay, because otherwise we don't understand what the Bible is actually saying. There's another scripture that talks about the blood of an animal being the nephesh. Okay, it's translated as life in most translations, but it's actually nephesh, so it's associated with the blood, it seems there. You know, that's the nephesh of an animal, and that's quite interesting. Now, when they translated the Hebrew into Greek, they usually use the word sucher, and this is where the Greek ideas come in, because people say, oh, sucher, I speak Greek, or I know Greek, and they think they know what the Hebrew writers were actually saying. What we should remember is that the Jewish or Hebrew translators who were working into Greek, they were using these words not with a Greek translation, not with a Greek definition, I should say, but with a Hebrew definition, and that's really very different. They meant something quite different. Okay, the Greek word is sucher, Okay, it's interesting that indeed in Corinthians and a few other verses, the soulish man, the man who is psychikos, okay, is actually a sinful man, a man who doesn't accept the things of God. He's a natural man. In Corinthians 15, it talks about the resurrection. It talks about, as there's been a natural man, there will also be a spiritual man. And the natural man is very much what we would normally think of as the man of the flesh. Okay, the old time Pentecostals used to talk about a man who was soulish, who was a man who was very worldly and carnal and sinful, even though he claimed to be a Christian. And I think that we have to go back to this proper use of the word soul, suker or psychikos, soulish. Okay, and the proper use of the word nefesh. We need to lose this Greek thinking and go into a Hebrew mindset. All right. Now that's a diversion from what I normally talk about on these things. I don't want to harp on too much about Greek and Hebrew, but the main point, actually, I'm not concerned about what people think about the word soul or how they use it. It's not an important doctrine. But what is important is the principle that we often come to the Bible and we read it and we assume that we know what something means, and we get the wrong idea and we misunderstand completely. And I think it's really important to learn how to do the concordance search. Like I said, just get a phone, get an app with Strong's numbers, which will allow you to draw up a list of scriptures which have a certain Greek word in or Hebrew word. You don't have to read Greek or Hebrew, and that's the beauty of it. And you can go through those verses and you can see how it's used in the English translation, and therefore you can formulate your own definition instead of relying on a dictionary which might be wrong or coloured by the theology of the author. All right. So that's day 5, and I hope you enjoyed that. It's a little bit different. We haven't actually said that much about the scripture, but I hope that definition will help you to understand all those other verses. Do look through them and enjoy. In closing, I would like to point out that the animals were told to be fruitful and to multiply. Okay, a lot of people talk about reproduction as if it's something sinful that came about because of the fall. This is before the fall, and the animals are told to multiply and fill the earth. All right, and or fill the waters in the seas. Let's just close there, and we'll go into day 6 next. Please hit subscribe or share this, please, to bless people and to glorify God. Thank you.